Hey everyone, welcome to another session of Conversations with Courageous Cancer Warriors. And I am really excited for today's guest. So Reid Peterson, he is this amazing creator of this application called Grief Refuge. And what it does is it supports people daily in grief, right? And so, as you know, part of going through our cancer journey, we're grieving what we have lost. So I thought that this was an amazing segment and something that could be of support for a lot of people. So Reid, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, Lori. I always look for the opportunity for meaningful conversations. What you're doing is very important in the world. And so I'm just grateful to be here to talk to you.
Thanks. So you are the creator of Grief Refuge. I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Okay, I'll start with a little backstory, and it does involve cancer. In 2008, my stepfather, Warren, who was the father figure of my life, he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And my mom became his primary caregiver. And in a way, Warren battled the cancer for 8 years before he died in 2016. And it was a long, grueling process. And when Warren, in the evenings, when Warren was sleeping, I would call and talk to my mom, and I would companion her because it was very, very difficult on her mental state, her physical abilities, all of the above. And mind you, she was a registered nurse for 25 years. And so she had the skills and the experience to provide a lot of this care for Warren. And yet, those evenings that I would call her and we'd talk, they were filled with grief and tears. And I got to, it sounds bittersweet, but I got to connect with her and him on that level because at the time we lived 2,000 miles apart. And so I just didn't go over there physically and spend time with them and support them in a physical setting. So I did it verbally. And it was hard. It was hard living so far away and feeling like I could do more and not knowing what to do and trying to get creative and things like that. So that backstory ties into the creation of the app. When I decided to make an app for grief support, I realized, gosh, people could really benefit from something on a daily basis. And that's really the context and the concept and the foundation of the application. It provides a daily audio message I like to call it a musing, if you will. Yeah. And it's somewhat meditative, but it's intended to help soothe the nervous system, to help calm and relax someone and help provide them with a little bit of perspective on the grieving process. Obviously their grieving process, because everyone's grieving process is so unique. And so that's really the nuts and bolts of the app, Grief Refuge.
And I love that. And what you said is just so true, right? We all handle adversity differently. Ironically enough, and my dad would be okay with me sharing that, my dad is in the middle of multiple myeloma. He got diagnosed literally 6 months after I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I know exactly what that disease is like and the struggle that comes with it. We were fortunate enough that I was living in the South, like the southern states of Connecticut, of the United States, and my parents were in Connecticut, that they've actually just moved to Florida, which is where I'm based out of now. So I'm very grateful to have him nearby because it was very difficult to not be close by with everything that was happening with him. And, my mom, is in the same boat, right? She wasn't a nurse, but she definitely is going through that struggle. And like, she calls us, she has 3 daughters, and like, we try to be an emotional support for her. But, anybody who's gone through this knows like, there's only so much you can do. So I love the fact that you have this as an option for people. So talk to us a little bit about you said it's like meditative, like what does the app provide? How does it work?
Well, good question. What does the app provide? There's a lot of answers, and I think essentially it provides a calming voice in a time of need. One of the reasons why I decided to go forward with the app, I have technology skills, but truthfully, people started giving me feedback of the quality and the tone of my voice. They said, Reid, wow, you've got a very soothing voice.
You do.
And years ago, I used to facilitate meditations. And so I have that cadence, I think.
Mhm.
And so I narrate a lot of these daily thoughts that are shared every single day. The app shares the content, and it's an audio file. And so somebody who has the app, they plug in their earbuds, they hit play on the audio player, and they're invited to close their eyes and just experience what comes up for them. And so it may bring up a lot of emotion, and that's okay too. It may help them feel more calm if they're dealing with a lot of anxiety at the time. There's been a lot of feedback that the app is very intuitive, and it's I am very grateful to get that feedback, because I'll be honest, Lori, when I made the app, I thought, oh, everybody's grief and adversity experience is so unique. How do I share a personalized message to the masses? And I just put it out there to the universe. Truthfully, I said, I'm going to need some help with this. And so when I create the content, I usually write first. I write the audio meditation, and I just connect with the divine. I live in an area of the country where the ocean's just a few blocks away, and there's something very powerful and spiritual about being next to the Pacific Ocean. And so I bring my notebook down there, and yes, I do handwrite, and put my hand to pick up my pen and put it to the paper, and just start kind of connecting with, I feel like, my higher power, and start writing, and then create like a message to share. And as an example, the app published one today called Questioning. And it's really about like the grief experience, and how at any phase or any stage, whatever you want to call it, in an experience of somebody's grief, you can have so many questions in regards to your personal life, in regards to why such a devastating event happened. And also, anybody who believes in a higher power, you can question that existence. So today was a very pondering, deep reflection about the questions we come up with. And then also, I'll spoiler alert, it shifted towards focusing on intentions, so that there isn't as strong of an attachment to the question itself or seeking the answer. It's just trusting that through the expression of your emotions and through getting support from others, in having intentionality, you likely will get the answers to what you're seeking.
Absolutely. And I couldn't think of a more important platform to have that be available to than, people who are dealing with, a cancer diagnosis. It is so traumatizing to go through that, to hear the words, you have cancer, and then you're like, now what? Like, how do I live? How do I get through this? How do I, a lot of the struggles that my clients deal with, I'm a wellness coach, and I'm also a coach that supports cancer patients in getting back to living a life that they love after a diagnosis. But a lot of times what people find, or that I find people saying is, what's the point? My cancer is just going to come back anyways. What's the point of getting excited about anything? What's the point about making plans about anything? And that's why I say it's, we go through a grieving process of the loss of innocence that we have, right? Like we can't just be our joyful selves, because it's always in the back. There's always a conversation, unless you're intentional about quieting that down. Mm-hmm. And that's what I see this app is such a value for people, of being like the accepting like the acceptance of this is what you're dealing with right now. And would you say that that would be true?
I do. Yeah. And gosh, I'm almost at a loss for words because I can feel the depth of what you're saying and the authenticity of it. And I guess I can respond in regards to the truth of it because Warren, my stepfather, was an excellent teacher in adversity and actually hanging on to hope. I remember him saying, they lived really close to the hospital that they were in and out of all the time. He was in and out of all the time. My mom obviously was always there with him. And I remember my mom would say, gosh, thank God we're so close to the hospital because we can always make it there in time. And I'm like, oh, that's hard. That's the mental state she's in.
Yeah.
But when I would talk to Warren, like I would hear some of the most amazing things of like, I'm going to live another 30 years. He was affirming like some of the most hopeful and inspiring things I've ever heard someone say. And it would just bring tears to my eyes to hear him say that.
Yeah.
And and so he was a great teacher for that. And I think that although it's not on the surface level of like, here's what the app's about, I feel like that is some of the undertones, some of the hope and healing in there.
Yeah. And we have, this platform is for, cancer warriors, but it's also for caregivers and anybody really affected, the healthcare workers, anyone affected with, cancer. And I find, having been on both sides, right? Like I've been a cancer warrior. And then within 6 months, like I said, my dad was diagnosed and then I became a caregiver. I forgot about my own healing and I, redirected towards him. And it's very different. It's two very different experiences where when it's happening to you, you internalize it and you just deal with what you have to deal with and however you need to deal with it. And then when it's happening to somebody else, it's almost harder because you're not able to support, like you're not able to help. You can't take it away. And that's why I find it very interesting. My mom doesn't drive, which is part of the problem. She will not drive that, long distance on the highway, which is really the catalyst of when we had something really, we had an incident that happens with my dad that was really, really concerning. And she really felt at a loss that she couldn't support him. And I think that was the catalyst as to why they, within 3 months of us my sister ended up also moving to Florida. And then within 3 months, my parents are like, okay, we're coming. Right. And we were all like, you're doing what? Like they left their home of 35 years in like 3 months. And we're like, none of us expected it. It was very courageous, but at the same time, I understood, it's exactly what you're saying. Your mom has this mindset of, thank God the hospital is really close. Whereas, that was her focus. And I know that was the focus for my mom as well. So for those of you listening, I hope this is resonating with you because there are different reasons why this would be a benefit, right? Having this conversation daily that Reid is providing in an app form really can be supporting you in so many different aspects of your life that are dealing with. And I hope it doesn't get lost in just like the grief of when we think of losing somebody, because there are different parts of our lives that we grieve about, right? Things that aren't going the way that we want them to, things that we just can't get past, things that we have lost in our lifetime that may not be losing someone specifically. So for those of you listening, I would love for you to be able to open your mind to this, support that's available to you. Because I'm so excited that this is available. And I hope a lot of people really do use this as a companion, like you say, to navigate through their journey. So I would love to hear a little bit more about, you said you were involved in meditations and a little bit more about you. Like, you do have an amazing voice. What else are you up to?
I wish I could say a lot of different things, but right now my life is about making the app because it does require a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Here's what I can tell you. When Warren got sick, I actually was in graduate school. I was in graduate school for psychology, and it was a really unique style of psychology. It's called transpersonal. And I had a dream that I was going to be a professor and I was going to teach transpersonal and spiritual psychology to the masses, right? You know, some major university. And through that system, I experienced a deep loss, a loss of a dream, because the system was built to turn, let's just call it creativity and spirituality into academics and research. And so I learned, I guess, a hard way, that mostly through my writing at the time, that my purpose on this planet really wasn't in alignment with academic institutions. And so I got my degree, and then I moved on and, you know, found jobs that were sustaining and meaningful at the time, and just evolved into really wanting to provide grief support to people.
Yeah.
And that led me to some pretty phenomenal trainings. I found an institute that provides certificate type training in a companioning model. And that's that institute's called the Center for Loss and Life Transition. They're based out of Fort Collins, Colorado, and have gone through their trainings and have deeply enjoyed them and learned a lot along the way. And first established a small private practice in doing what's called grief companioning, sort of like coaching, sort of like counseling, obviously not with a mental health focus, more of like, I'm a big proponent of intentionality. And so setting intentions, and then as a companion, I focus on listening more than anything, just listening with an empathetic and compassionate ear. And so with that, I also create a lot of content. I have to do it for the app daily, and also have facilitated some support groups, etc. And there's a dream. There's a dream also that sometime in the future there will be a grief refuge retreat center where people who need a break from the daily craziness of whatever's going on in their life, they can come to grief refuge and they can have that time for solitude, and also the honoring of their own grief experience. So I guess that's more about me, Lori.
Yeah, that retreat is definitely needed. And I just want to say, from an outsider looking in, you have definitely fulfilled that dream of taking your teachings to the masses, right? Like,
Thanks.
this app is going to change. This app is going to change so many lives. I feel so very honored, and I'm just very excited for the people that need the support. So how can people find you?
Well, we can go the old school way and just say, you know, visit the website, griefrefuge.com. But I also will say, since we have talked about the app, on your smartphone's app store, if you open it up and you just use the search function, you can search Grief Refuge and you'll find the app there.
I love it. I love it. And thank you so very much for your time today. And I would love to hear more about what you're up to. So please come by anytime.
You got it, Lori. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.